What can I tell you? I mean, this is so standard. I mean, the media, the entertainment industry is incredibly leftist. It is relentlessly leftist. They never met a government program they didn't like. They never met a tax increase they didn't like, except as so far as it applies to them. Michael Moore, of course, rails against capitalism and people who don't pay their taxes, and then applies for every conceivable tax break that he can find and employs a lot of non-union people. I mean, it's a standard thing. It's just what you have to say. And I don't know if this is all the influence of Judaism, which tends to be a little bit more on the left, with some notable examples like Ayn Rand, who didn't go that particular way. I don't know if it's because people who manipulate symbols are easy to manipulate through symbols, and leftism is just lower order thinking. As Bastiat mentioned 200 plus years ago, the socialists, the people on the left, make a fundamental confusion. They don't understand the difference between government and society. Government and society, these are two different things completely. And when you say the government shouldn't do something, because they don't understand the difference between government and society, when you say the government shouldn't do something, idiots on the left genuinely believe that you are saying that that thing should not be done. Government should not provide health care. Oh my God, he doesn't want health care provided to people. Government should not be in the business of trying to save poor people. Oh my God, he doesn't want poor people to be saved, right? They don't understand that government is in distinct opposition to society, not just philosophically, not just morally, but logically. Government uses force, and force is exactly what people don't want. How do we know people don't want what the government does? Because it has to do it by force. You weren't there at this concert by force, right? You were there to hear Stevie Wonder sing great songs and make bad politics. Well, you weren't there for the bad politics, but unfortunately, whenever people open their mouths in the entertainment industry, it's just this full-on gale force jet engine to the face, fuel-tipped laceration of leftist ideological crap. I mean, you just can't help it. I mean, you have to hold your nose. You just have to hold your nose completely. It's like making love to a beautiful woman with really bad breath. You just have to hold your nose and get your business
we've all
done.
been there.
Nothing. So I just want to point out that it is tragic. I mean, it is tragic that I think people who are artists, they have a lot of emotional investment and they have a lot of emotional attunement, and they're very susceptible to propaganda. The people who are emotional, people who quote reason or make decisions emotionally, are incredibly susceptible to propaganda. This is why philosophy has been so traditionally anti-emotion. The sort of cold-blooded Spock, Vulcan, uncaring, Socrates-style, above-it-all, Zen-based philosopher. It's because people who are emotional are so susceptible to propaganda that they're very dangerous to people who reason. Whereas I believe that the emotions are incredibly important and fundamental to the act of reasoning, because they're just so damn efficient. You can read Malcolm Gladwell's Blink for more on that. Emotions are incredibly efficient. The unconscious is thousands of times faster at processing disparate but related information than the conscious mind is. So people who are artists, they tend to be emotionally driven, and this is why they're able to connect with people emotionally. It's why they're able to sing so passionately. It's why they're able to do all these great things in terms of connecting with people at that level. But they're incredibly dangerous when it comes to propaganda. This is why you've got all these leftists, people like, Harrison Ford and Leonardo DiCaprio and James Cameron and Sheryl Crow. They're all they're all great artists, and they're all so lefty when it comes to the environment, and yet the amount of environmental destruction they have in their own lives is staggering. I've done a whole video on this on YouTube, but you can look up if you want. It is. Yeah, it's truly tragic and ridiculous, and I aim to not have a hostility towards the emotions, despite the fact that propagandists are very good at manipulating emotions and bypassing people's rational centrists. That's simply because people's rational centrists are atrophied and dusty, and in fact reactive to the propaganda personalities or pseudo-personalities that they inhabit. So it is tragic, and I, said at the beginning I tried to be a novelist for many years. I get it now that I had a synthesis of reason and emotion in my novels, and you can get my novels from freedomainradio.com if you're so inclined. It's so funny how people on the left get all hysterical about the McCarthy hearings, right? They're just constantly drumming out this McCarthy hearings where nobody went to jail and so people got blackballed and so on because they were affiliated with the communists who were evil Nazi-style thugs and brutal and sold all of Eastern Europe into jackbooted fascistic totalitarian thuggery for a couple of generations. And yet, if you try being a right-winger, or a conservative in Hollywood, I mean, unless you're huge and totally bankable, like Arnold Schwarzenegger and so on, you're toast. Like, you simply won't get hired. Ben Shapiro, who's going to come on the show, actually, he wrote a couple of scripts on spec for The Good Wife, I think. And it was all going well, and people loved his work, and you get paid ridiculous amounts of money for one of these scripts. And he was like, yay, this is fantastic. And then they said, oh, you know what? Actually, sorry, Ben, we went to your website. We didn't realize you were a conservative. So we're not going to be able to do business together. Sorry. Right? Because they consider conservatives to be like evil scum. Right? And it's incredibly bigoted. Yeah. I mean, if they said that about gays or they said that about blacks or. Yeah, no, look, the only thing that is keeping the America from a complete leftist takeover is talk radio, because talk radio is something that since the repeal of the fairness doctrine, I think it was in the 90s. Before the 90s in America, every time you put a political opinion on the air, you had to give equal time to the opposite political opinion. And who knew what the hell that was, and who would let idiot amateurs on the radio or whatever, right? So people just didn't talk politics on the radio because it was just opening yourself up to lawsuits from crazy, embittered, lonely people. And so when that was repealed, I think, was it under Reagan? I think it was under Reagan, in which case it would be the 80s. That's when, you know, Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and Michael Savage and all these people, I guess Tom Leykis is more of a libertarian, but that's when they began to really have a resurgence, and they had a very powerful resurgence, and that paved the way for conservative books and so on. And this is where you get the Ann Coulters and so on that come out of that tradition. And I mean, it's kind of an essential thing at the moment, just to sort of balance this endless fetishistic leftist propaganda that is just absolutely nonstop. Some of which I agree with, even though it's propaganda, it's still kind of dangerous and easy to become susceptible to. And just in the same way, I agree with some of the stuff on the right.
Yeah, did you support the war in Iraq at first?
I did. Before I did this show, I was a supporter of the war in Iraq. I just finished reading a Noam Chomsky book, and now I'm going to try Glenn Beck, because I'm always curious about what's going on these sides of the political fences. And it's hard to get offended by good writing. And actually, Glenn Beck is a bit of a better writer than Noam Chomsky, who's a bit of a plodding, pedantic octogenarian. But
I like Noam Chomsky's videos. I like him. He seems like he would be a nice guy to hang out with.
Yeah, he murmurs some great truths in that cracked up, broken up Clint Eastwood voice of his. But so I think that the reason why the left is winning is because they're just better at art. They're just better artists. They're really committed to their art. They're really committed to excellence within their art, and they don't have the self-doubt or requirement for balance that people on the right have. So people on the right say, well, Fox has to be fair and balanced, which means that they'll present left and right arguments. People on the left, I didn't bother with that at all. Like, I just read a review, an independent review of the major networks, 22 major networks, and their review of the current government shutdown, or as Fox News more accurately calls it, a slim down, because nothing's shutting down. Wouldn't that be great? Yeah. But what's happened is of the 22 networks, 0 of them have blamed the Democrats for this. 0 of them have blamed the Democrats. I mean, that's just amazing. And Bernie Goldberg's got a couple of books on this that are well worth reading, and his one called "The Slobbering Love Affair the Media Has with Barack Obama" is quite instructive, as is Michelle Malkin's book on the corruption of Obama before, like in the politics of Chicago and so on. No, but what is great about Barack Obama is he reveals the hypocrisy of the left. I mean, it's a wonderful thing about him, is that nobody can ever claim that the left has any ideological consistency whatsoever, because he's doing stuff way worse than Bush ever did. And you don't hear anything.
Oh, yeah.
So the
I love
wonderful
those
thing is that to
political memes.
anybody with any objectivity, the left has discredited itself for at least a generation. Anybody who wishes to defend the left on principle, you just got to whip out a couple of things that Obama has done and watch them go all kinds of silent and slink back in the shadows. And the right has been hammering on them for that, and good thing too. I mean, the degree of hypocrisy about the anti-war movement, the degree of hypocrisy about the bailouts, the degree of hypocrisy about civil rights and whistleblowers and the war on drugs is just astonishing. The degree of hypocrisy about detainees at Gitmo and the degree of hypocrisy about not pulling out of the war until the Iraq government threatened to hold the U.S. soldiers criminally liable for criminal actions. Oh, I mean, the list just goes on and on. I mean, the man is obviously a complete monster, just as they all are, but it's wonderful to see all of the hypocrites who have suddenly gone silent now that the spell of Obama has gone across the land. They just have lost their larynxes completely.
You know, and it's so funny, all those things you listed, they're all political action movements. The opposite happens when you try to do anything through politics. It's whenever you try to steal money from someone to do something else, you're always going to get the opposite effect, I feel like. And I mean,
sure, violence always produces the opposite. Well, violence produces the opposite in general, but it achieves what you want in particular. Right, so the guy who gets $1 million subsidy, it makes everyone poorer in general, even him by a small degree, but he's still up like $975,000. So for him, it achieves his goal, but it's always stated as a general goal. Like nobody ever gives a subsidy by saying, well, we're going to subsidize these green industries because they gave a lot of money to our campaign, and screw the taxpayer and other people and all the jobs we're going to destroy. We just got to pay off our donors. They say, well, this is good for the economy as a whole and blah, blah, blah. So violence achieves the opposite of its stated goals, but it always achieves exactly what, although if it always achieved the opposite, nobody would do it, or nobody would use violence. It achieves the opposite of the goals it claims, but it very much achieves the reality of what it wants, which is to get things for nothing, right? Yeah, no, but it's not weird. I mean, it's only weird if you believe the stated goals of the people in power.
You know, aren't evil.
Yeah, I mean, because people listen to the surface of what people say, and they just content themselves with that, and then they find themselves endlessly frustrated that reality isn't matching the propaganda. But that's the whole point of propaganda, is that if reality was there, you wouldn't need the propaganda.